The coffee pot trembled in Emma's hand as she overheard the whispered conversation. 3 men in the corner booth, their eyes cold as winter. The moment he orders his usual, "Black coffee, no sugar. We make our move." The Iron Wolves' president was about to walk through that door, completely unaware that 3 men were waiting to end his life with a single, predictable routine. Without thinking, Emma would lean close and whisper 2 words that would change everything. "Don't talk." The bell above the door of the Crossroads Diner chimed as Emma Martinez refilled sugar dispensers for the 3rd time that morning. Thursday mornings were usually quiet, but today felt different. The air carried a tension she couldn't name, like static before a lightning strike. She'd been working at the Crossroads for 3 years, long enough to know the regulars from the riders just passing through. The diner sat at the intersection of Route 66 and County Road 12, making it a natural stopping point for motorcycle clubs traveling across the Southwest. This morning, 3 men occupied Booth 9, the corner booth with clear sight lines to both entrances. They'd arrived separately over the past hour. Their leather cuts bore no club patches, which was the first warning sign. In the motorcycle world, that was like showing up to a gunfight wearing a mask. Emma had served them once already. They'd barely touched their food, spending more time watching the parking lot than eating. The youngest one, maybe 25 with nervous eyes, kept checking his phone. The older man, built like a linebacker with a neck tattoo of a scorpion, hadn't stopped staring at the main entrance. The third man, lean with a gray beard, tapped his fork against his plate in a rhythm that made Emma's skin crawl. "Table 6 needs a warm-up," called Jake, the cook, snapping Emma back to reality. She grabbed the coffee pot and made her way across the diner, but her path took her close to Booth 9. That's when she heard it. "The moment he orders black coffee, no sugar, we move." The scorpion neck man's voice was barely above a whisper. "That's the signal. Colt always orders the same thing. The second he says it, we finish this." Emma's hand froze. Black coffee, no sugar. She knew exactly who they were talking about. Colt Reaper Daniels, president of the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club, stopped at the Crossroads every Thursday morning at 9:30, regular as clockwork. Always sat at the counter, always ordered black coffee with 2 eggs over easy, always left a $20 tip. He was polite, quiet, and, according to local rumors, one of the most feared men in 3 counties. The rumble of approaching motorcycles vibrated through the diner's windows. Emma looked out to see 5 bikes pulling into the lot, their riders wearing the Iron Wolves colors, a snarling wolf's head over crossed bones on black leather. The man at the front, maybe 50, with silver threading through his dark beard and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance, was unmistakably the club's president. Colt Daniels moved with the quiet confidence of a man who'd survived things most people couldn't imagine. 4 men followed him in, taking positions near the entrance and exits with practiced precision. Colt himself walked to his usual spot at the counter, nodding to familiar faces, touching his fingers to his forehead in a casual salute to old Martha, who worked the register. Emma glanced back at Booth 9. The 3 men had gone rigid. The scorpion neck man's hand had disappeared under his jacket. The young one's eyes never left Colt. The graybeard's knuckles had gone white, gripping his coffee mug. "The moment he orders black coffee, no sugar, we move." Her blood turned to ice. Colt settled onto his stool with the satisfaction of a man comfortable in his kingdom. "Good morning, folks," he called out, his voice warm and commanding. "Beautiful day for a ride?" Several customers looked up, smiling. This was part of the Colt Daniels experience, his impromptu greetings that made everyone feel included. Emma watched in horror as Colt reached for his menu, though she knew he wouldn't need it. She could see the 3 men in booth 9 shifting, hands moving toward their jackets with practiced smoothness. In 30 seconds, maybe less, Colt would give his order and trigger his own execution. Time seemed to slow. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to stay out of it, to keep her head down and pretend she'd heard nothing. But she couldn't. Maybe it was the way Colt had helped Martha carry groceries to her car last month. Maybe it was because she'd grown up in this town where people looked out for each other. Or maybe it was simply because watching someone die when you could prevent it was something she couldn't live with. Before she could second-guess herself, Emma moved. She glided toward the counter with smooth efficiency, coffee pot in hand, and a bright smile fixed on her face. To everyone watching, she was simply doing her job. "Morning, Colt," she said softly as she approached. "The usual today?" He looked up at her, and for a moment she felt the full weight of his attention. His eyes were darker than she'd expected, intelligent and measuring. "You know it, Emma," he said, starting to speak. This was it. In seconds, he would say the words, and the men in booth 9 would turn the crossroads into a crime scene. Emma leaned forward to pour coffee, bringing her face close to his ear. To anyone watching, it looked like exceptional customer service. "Don't talk," she whispered, her voice so soft it was barely breath against his ear. Colt's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. She felt him go absolutely still, every muscle suddenly alert. His eyes snapped to hers, searching her face with laser intensity. The diner held its breath. Instead, Colt slowly lowered his hand and gave her the smallest of nods. "You know what?" he said carefully. "I think I'll just take the coffee for now. Let me look at the menu a minute." Across the room, Emma saw the 3 men in booth 9 exchange confused glances. The scorpion neck man's hand remained under his jacket, but uncertainty flickered across his face. The young one checked his phone again, more frantically. The graybeard's eyes darted between Colt and his companions. Without the signal they'd been waiting for, they were lost. Colt lifted his coffee cup slightly, but instead of ordering, he simply nodded to the room and took a sip. It was elegant, mysterious, and completely wrong for 3 would-be killers who needed him to say one specific phrase. Emma stepped back, her legs shaking. She'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, she'd prevented a murder without anyone realizing what had just happened. Except Colt knew. As she moved away, she could feel his gaze following her, could sense the questions building behind those dark eyes. And in booth 9, 3 very dangerous men were beginning to realize that their carefully laid plan had just crumbled to dust. If you believe in the power of observation, in trusting your instincts, and in the courage it takes to speak up when something feels wrong, then pause for a moment. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bike Diaries. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, because this story will remind you that heroes come in all sizes, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Colt's fingers wrapped around his coffee cup, like a man holding on to his sanity. Behind his practiced smile, his mind was racing. In his world, unexpected whispers from strangers usually meant one of 2 things: betrayal or salvation. "Everything all right, boss?" Ghost, his vice president, appeared at his elbow. To anyone watching, he was simply checking if his president needed anything. In reality, his hand was resting inside his jacket, fingers on his weapon. "Perfect," Colt said. "Just appreciating the service here." But nothing was perfect. In the corner of his eye, he caught movement from booth 9. The 3 men were shifting restlessly. One kept checking his phone. Another kept looking toward the exit. "Ghost," he said quietly. "The 3 men in booth 9. You see them?" Ghost's eyes flickered toward the corner. "Yeah. Been nursing the same drinks for an hour. Ordered food they're not eating. Colt nodded. Men who didn't belong. Men with a purpose. The waitress appeared again, this time at a table near booth 9. She was positioning herself where she could hear conversations, where she could watch without seeming to watch. She's been listening, he realized. She overheard something. In booth 9, the 3 men were standing now, dropping cash on the table with obvious haste. They moved toward the exit, but Colt caught the way the scarred man's eyes swept the restaurant one more time, like a predator marking territory he planned to return to. Emma was clearing a nearby table when they passed. Colt watched her closely and saw something that made his blood